Well, this is a podcast. We don't have a name for it yet, but I'm sure we'll figure it out.
We'll get there when we get there.
Yeah, that's right. So, guys, I'm super stoked to be here. I'd love to introduce Corbin. He's actually going to be the man behind the scenes with us. He's going to be helping us out, but I wanted to give everybody a feel for exactly what that looks like. We're through and through just adventure advocates. So I'm super stoked to be here with him. And Corbin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Corbin Probasco. I'm a videographer and editor, marketing person here at XYZ Marketing. Me and Quaid here met over the phone. Jonathan introduced us, and pretty quickly realized we were really similar, both really into adventurous things and ATVs and just living life to the fullest. And so we started talking, and then decided it'd be fun to do this. And so we've got a lot of similarities. We both really respect what each other's all about, and I'm really just glad to be a part of this.
Yeah, and I can't thank you enough for being here. Man, I remember, it seemed like a phone call, and the next thing you know, we were lining up lunch, and before you know it, we were just sharing stories. It was like, wait, what's the goal here? It's like we were just sharing experiences, and it was really fun. I know you mentioned, you got a few projects. You got like Samurai going on.
Yeah.
You're in the dirt bike scene. I don't know. Tell us a little bit about that, man. Like, how's the projects coming? What are you?
So, I actually just finished something, but I guess a little introduction. I got into the car scene with my first truck. I bought it when I was, I think, 14. Nice. Worked all summer. Bought it. It was a clapped out piece of garbage. It drove. It's a 1990 F-250.
There you go.
And it had worked at a steel mill, so it was pretty beat. It was all patinaed and rusted. And I literally rebuilt everything on that truck in high school. I worked almost full time all through high school to afford. From the time I was able to work, I got a job somehow as a mechanic at 14. I had some connections. So after hours, I'd work on that truck. And then it was like an obsession for me. It just took off from there with everything, and got a dirt bike as well. And pretty much my time was split between those two things. I recently moved back here to Utah, and I sold my truck because it was still kind of a piece of garbage. It was what I learned on, and so there's a lot of things I would have done differently. It looked really good. It was like a pre-runner, long travel suspension. I had made mistakes and then fixed it, so I wanted to start fresh. So I bought a Subaru Forester XT and a Suzuki Samurai, and I've been doing work on both of them since then.
Very nice, man. Yeah, that's actually a story I didn't know. That's something that we actually have a lot in common about. I remember learning really young, crawling around the driveway with my old man. We had an old 79 Ford. I still got it. And that was kind of how I got my start in the mechanical field. I know that's something we didn't mention yet, but we actually both have that mechanical background, which is really rad. But it started almost a sickness in some kind of ways. Like
I know it runs you into the ground because it's such hard work and so much money,
and it just keeps you like you're always on the what can I do better, what can I do next.
Yeah, or just it breaks and you're like, okay, now I have to fix this.
Yeah. It's like time to dig into it again. 2.0, and that's really really cool. I respect that. I worked really hard myself. At 14, I bought my first four-wheeler, the old Yamaha Banshee, in 94.
And that's quite the first four-wheeler.
Yeah, and it was always the dream. My dad had one and sold it, unfortunately, right before it was time to had some financial stuff going on. So got rid of that, and then fast forward some time later, I ended up buying one of my own. And then I'm also big on the dirt bike scene. At 18, I picked up I had a CR250R for a long time, and that was just rad. I loved it.
Yeah.
But anyways, it's kind of the same thing. We worked just to play.
I have never heard it put a better way. You work so you can play.
Yep. And that's one thing, that I really was pretty amped about when Corbin was like, yeah, I'll jump on and do this with you and run the back end, because you actually left the mechanic career to pursue videography, correct?
I did.
That's got to be an adventure in its own.
It was. Imagine. I had moved from being a mechanic to a machinist, and I've been working as a machinist for about a year. And then I started doing videography. And honestly, for me, it has been pretty, I guess, I don't know if I'd say it's an adventure, but it's more of a high risk thing. You know, it's less of a secure career for me. At least that's what I feel, how I feel about it, because it relies a lot more about your, you know, your ability to create. And it's not so much of a solid thing. And so really it's a lot more up to how and what I do than just taking home a paycheck. And that is exciting, but also pretty scary, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I love, you know. With risk is part of the adventure, right? That's part of it. Awesome, man. So real quick, being from Utah, you know, we're pretty spoiled. We got it all. We got the rocks, we got the mountains, we got a little bit of water, not so much this last year, but
slowly losing it.
Where's some of your favorite places to break out, you know, if you got some free time on your hands and you want to go play?
So one of my all-time favorites, and just this is where I went growing up. It's not even the best place around, but it's one of the closest. It's called Knowles. You ever been there?
Oh yeah. I was raised on Knowles.
Yeah, that's me. I grew up on Knowles. I'd take the dirt bikes out there. I'd take the go-karts I'd build, my truck. It's where I test the suspension on my truck. And it's not quite sand dunes. It's more just desert. There are some little dunes, and then like some decent hill climbs, some flats. It's just a good playground to go mess around and practice hitting jumps and just spend the day. We'd go camp. Me and my buddies go after high school and just camp there a couple nights.
Yeah. Bunny whoops
Bring
for
a
miles,
bunch.
too.
Yes.
Bigger than you can imagine.
Yeah, it just gets hairier and hairier.
Yep. It's funny, you know, speaking of the Knolls, it was really young. We spent a lot of time there, and I would say probably by 10 it faded out. But I think we probably made a good portion of those. We used to run full-size 70s Broncos out there.
I love Broncos.
And it was funny, you know, like I can remember my dad, he had this toolbox that was once square, and they just went mobbing through these whoops, and it was round by the time it was done.
Really?
And then one of the neighborhood kids, they used to stack, like, play taxi. They'd play, like, 15 kids in this Bronco, and they'd be, like, head bobbing, you know, all these, like, under 15-year-old kids. My sister, she ended up smacking her face against a kid in front of her.
Wow.
And he had a big bald head, you know. He shaved it off, like, goofing off. Well, the only thing in there, it was a clean one. She had a diaper. My dad was like, "Here, hold this to your face." So for the next,
put a diaper on his head.
For the whole ride, she had a diaper just shoved to her face, like catching all this blood.
And sand and dust, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And a couple, you know, there's got to be sand in there and holes in the floorboard, like all the old trucks had, you know, the old steel floors. So Knowles has a very, very important place in my heart for that kind of stuff. So that's cool. You know, I didn't realize that we were that close, man. We could be brothers. We're just long lost.
Honestly.
All right, here's a really fun one. Have you ever had a worst nightmare? Like out on the trail, you're out doing something and just total chaos breaks loose, just total.
Of course, yeah. There's been a few times. My first bike was an 85, but then my first real bike was a YZ250.
Oh, yeah.
Two-stroke, and it was a 1997.
Okay.
But I put suspension, swapped it from a 2005, rebuilt the forks, updated it a little bit, and then rebuilt the engine. So it ran pretty well, but it's still a 97. You know how those old two-strokes are. They're hard to start. They foul plugs all the time. And so I kept an extra spark plug and a wrench underneath my air filter. And I had, you know, those little push pin like body clips for cars.
Oh, yeah.
I used those to hold the back of my seat down so I could pull it out with my hands and then get to my wrench and stuff whenever I followed a plug. But I had a desert tank, so there was like half an inch of space to get this plug out. And I don't know how I still enjoyed it because that thing was the biggest pile of garbage ever. But one day, it was getting close to the end of the year. This is when I was back in high school. Me and my buddy were just sitting in our first period class, and we're like, "Do you want to go riding?"
We're over it, yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, I want to go riding." So we just left, and we went to Knowles. We were young. We may be the only people to ever get lost at Knowles. But we started in Knowles, ended up, I think, somewhere in Dale. Like, we drove for hours, and at first we were just following one of those whoop trails, and I was like, let's turn around and go find it again. And then we actually got lost. We kept getting turned around. We started at Knowles. We wound up on the freeway past Dale.
Whoa, that is insane. That's some miles.
It was some serious miles, and we were scared. Like, there was a couple times where he was almost panicking. So I was like, I have to be the calm one here because I got to figure this out. But we got up to the top of one of the little mountain things, and it was just, as far as our eyes could see, it was just unrecognizable. We weren't on any trails.
Didn't know where
We
you
just
were.
cross country was like, crap, and no reception. I was like, and he's almost freaking out, so I had to make the decision. I could see like one trail cutting in the mountain over here and then like some structure over here.
Yeah.
And so I decided to go to the structure. We only had one gas. We only really had gas enough for one of them. So we went to the structure and ended up finding a road that led us to the freeway, and then rode back on the opposing side of the freeway to the trucks.
Oh, man.
But
That's
I was on my
insane.
last spark plug. We didn't have any water. We didn't have anything. I didn't check my gas once because I didn't want the added stress of I'm almost out of
you're
gas.
almost out.
And we ran out of gas as we were getting into the parking lot at Knowles, back to the truck.
Wow.
So we sat there for like 15 minutes. We're like, holy crap, that was nuts. And ate like granola bar and then kept riding the rest of the day.
Topped off and kept it going. I love it. Yeah, that's the way to do it, man. Those old YZ steel frames, they're something. I've got
heavy.
a few experiences with those myself. My
Yeah.
buddy actually has a 97, and I'm sure we'll get him on later, but that'll be fun to see how you guys relate in
Yeah.
stories, because it's like everybody with a steel frame's got a story that's like, man, I've been there.
Yeah, my bike almost deserted me or killed me.
Yep. Well, cool.
How about you?
Oh, man, so many.
I'm sure you've got so many.
So many.
You've been doing this longer than me, so I'm sure you got 10
let's
times
see.
more.
Probably one of my worst nightmares ever. Man, I don't know. I got a lot. Like, really been testing my luck out. But mine was actually on the way home. It was just one that was recently. This may not be the worst ever. This is like a real strang of luck, I guess. I rebuilt the front end of my truck. And I was like, I was hell-bent on getting to Sand Hollow. I'm like, man, I want to see Sand Hollow.
Yeah.
It's really tradition for us. We'll go out and do a birthday trip every year. And so I loaded up. I borrowed my buddy's enclosed. He's got a big 28-footer. So we just packed everybody's toys. He's like, yeah, I'll just cruise down there when you guys have the time show up as you get it. And on the way down, man, my truck, I'd rebuilt the front end and the steering box was never quite right.
Yeah.
Like, I drove to Logan Canyon pulling a boat with this thing right after I got it done. I drove it for actually 2.5 years after I'd rebuilt the front end.
Yeah.
Never had I,
Just always
found the problem.
loose.
And so it was always, it'd be really pitchy in the road. And so I tried adjusting the gearbox itself because it was brand new. I was like, I don't know if that's right. So anyways, I towed down. It took me about 6 hours to get down there. And we set up camp and did everything. We drove it around. We drove into town, we went and played, had a great time at Sand Hollow. Luckily that was like one of our trips. It's like, hey, nothing happened. Like, everything went according to plan. You gotta see it. Like, our buddy, his dad took his Jeep down there. We rock crawled a little bit. We rode some trails. The sad thing is we were all on quads and dirt bikes. We didn't see, like any of what Sand Hollow really has to offer. So I'm really itching to get back there. But on the way home, I actually called my dad. I'm like, hey, I feel like you probably need to pull this trailer home if you could come down and get it and head back up. It's like, I don't know if it's gonna
make it
the way I need it to,
Yeah.
And so he's like, yeah, I'll do that. So my niece and nephew were with him, and my sister was with him, and they jumped in. They towed it home for me. Well, my buddy's dad, he rode down with me, and he rode home with me, and I've never seen him swear or drop any curse words or anything. We'd be passing semis, man, and he'd be like, "Ooh, that made me nervous," and I got him swearing a few times. Well, it was crazy. I dropped my buddy's dad off, which is like a block and a half away from me. I pull into the house, and I'm going to turn to my driveway, and I just hear this metal clink hit the road.
Oh.
I took my steering wheel, man, and I grabbed it. I just chucked it because I knew exactly what it was, and it was the nut to my pitman arm off the steering box, and it totally fell clean out of the truck. And my steering, at that point in time, I just chucked the steering wheel because I knew it totally fell apart.
Yeah.
And that thing just sat there and spun. My wheel stayed straight, and I was like,
at least you weren't on the freeway.
Yeah. I was like, how,
could have been bad.
Somebody was totally looking out for me, or how lucky was I, It's like somebody was saying their prayers that day, but yeah, just one of the little things that just kind of really makes you step back and think, wow, it's crazy. Out of all the things you do, and there's more, and I don't want to give them all away right up front. But out of all the things that you go do and these adventures you find, it's like, wow, my
Coulda
one
died.
little mistake, you know.
Yeah.
and that's what it left with. But yeah, so that's one of mine. That was
One of
was
the many,
more
I'm
like
sure.
just saying thanks to God, like, hey, thanks for
Thanks for-
keeping me in one piece for the last
man.
10 hours I spent on the freeway that you could have just, you know, because it's like, yikes, what a relief that is.
Yeah.
But, well, man, I think we're getting pretty close on time, but right before we kind of jump off, what's one thing that always kind of reminds you to live for an adventure? What keeps you coming back, right? We could talk about the nightmares and everything, but what always has you looking for an adventure?
You know, obviously, the kind of stuff that we do can be really exhausting and
Yeah.
very expensive, and keeping up that lifestyle is difficult sometimes. And so for me, it goes with, it's like an ebb and a flow. Things will just get crazy. I'll get super busy. I'll be working really hard and then playing really hard, and you'll have these moments, you know, those moments of up on top of the mountain, or after you just pull the sickest drift of your life.
Heck yeah.
And keep going straight, and it was perfect, and you're like, that felt really cool. Or you finish building a project and it looks amazing and it works amazing. And I don't know, there's just something about that on the times that I'm tired and I take it easy a little bit, I miss it. I'm like, I don't feel like I'm living to the fullest. And so it always has me coming back. And, you know, I always like to stay prepared. I bring tools and guns and longboards in my car all the time, just in case. But, you know, honestly, I'd just say the fulfillment of accomplishing those hard things and the satisfaction of, you know, finishing projects and achieving hard things, I'd say at its core is what keeps me coming back.
Hell yeah, I couldn't say that better myself. I agree with you there. So, well, everybody, I think that's pretty much going to wrap it up for us today. But I want to thank Corbin. This is definitely not the last time we'll hear him. We'll have him chime in with us from behind the scenes on some stories and stuff to come. So, yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, man, thanks for being here.